The person you love opened up to their mother about you for the first time. And shockingly, she cried out, "You! My beloved child, hold that restless thought for just one more heartbeat, because what is about to unfold began with a conversation no one expected, a conversation that had been locked away in silence for far too long." The person you love reached a moment where keeping everything inside was no longer possible. They walked into a room carrying emotions they had hidden from everyone, and for the very first time, they chose to tell their mother about you. Not with perfect words. Not with rehearsed sentences. Just with honesty that could no longer stay buried. And then, something happened that neither of them saw coming. Before we reach that unforgettable moment, stay a little longer, because every detail matters more than it first appears. Imagine someone carrying your name quietly in their heart for weeks, perhaps months. Every ordinary day looked the same on the outside, yet inside them a silent story kept growing. They remembered unexpected smiles. They remembered conversations that refused to leave their mind. They remembered moments when they almost reached out but stopped themselves, wondering if the timing was right. Have you ever noticed how the strongest emotions often speak the least? Sometimes silence is not distance. Sometimes silence is simply love searching for courage. On this particular day, something changed. There was no dramatic event. No loud announcement. Only a quiet realization that pretending no longer brought peace. The person you love finally understood that some feelings become heavier the longer they remain hidden. They sat across from their mother, took a slow breath, and spoke your name with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. At first, the room felt completely still. Their mother listened without interrupting. Every sentence revealed another piece of a story she had never heard before. She learned about the kindness that stayed in their memory. She learned about the respect they admired. She learned about the future they secretly imagined whenever your name crossed their thoughts. Each word painted a picture that became clearer and clearer. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of answering immediately, she became unusually quiet. Not because she disapproved. Not because she was confused. She was remembering something. A detail. A feeling. An impression she had never spoken aloud. And that silence lasted just long enough to make every heartbeat feel louder. What if the greatest turning points in life never announce themselves? What if they begin with nothing more than one honest conversation? Keep listening carefully, because the next few moments hold the very reason this story became unforgettable. The person you love began wondering if they had made a mistake by opening their heart. Questions filled their mind. Was this too much? Too soon? Would everything change after today? Then their mother slowly looked up. Her expression softened. Her eyes reflected understanding instead of uncertainty. It was as though she had suddenly connected invisible pieces that had been scattered for a long time. She whispered, "So, this is why you've been different." Those simple words carried extraordinary meaning. For the first time, someone else truly saw what had been hidden inside your person's heart. No pretending. No denying. No avoiding the truth anymore. The atmosphere shifted completely. The conversation was no longer about explaining feelings. It became about understanding destiny, timing, growth, and the remarkable way certain people enter our lives when we least expect them. Before you go any further, ask yourself one quiet question. Have you ever wondered whether someone has spoken about you with far more sincerity than you could ever imagine? Sometimes the most important conversations happen in rooms you'll never see, yet they quietly shape tomorrow. And just when it seemed the discussion had reached its most emotional point, their mother suddenly reacted in a way that left the entire room frozen. She leaned forward, her eyes widening with genuine surprise, and the first word escaped her lips. You. Wait until the next part, because what she said after that single word changed the entire direction of the conversation, and nothing remained the same afterward. A single word hung in the air. You. And for a brief moment, time itself seemed to slow. No one spoke. No one moved. The person you love searched their mother's face, trying to understand what had caused such an unexpected reaction. Was she surprised? Was she remembering something? Or had she seen a truth that had remained invisible until this very moment? Stay with me, because what followed carried a depth no one in that room could have predicted. Their mother took another quiet breath before continuing. Her voice was calm, yet every sentence carried unusual certainty. You've never spoken about anyone like this before. Those words landed gently, but they echoed through the room with incredible weight. She wasn't talking about excitement. She wasn't talking about infatuation. She was talking about transformation. She had watched her child change in subtle ways over recent weeks. There had been more patience. More quiet reflection. A different kind of smile that appeared without explanation. Even difficult days no longer seemed to steal their hope the way they once had. She had noticed all of it long before this conversation began. The person you love lowered their eyes, almost embarrassed that their heart had become so easy to read. Then came another unexpected question. What is it about this person that brings out this version of you? No answer came immediately. Because some feelings cannot be explained with perfect words. Some people arrive in your life and quietly inspire you to become someone stronger, kinder, and more peaceful without ever realizing they have done so. Sometimes that influence speaks louder than any declaration ever could. The room grew peaceful again. Not uncomfortable. Peaceful. The kind of silence that allows hidden truths to rise to the surface. If you've stayed this far, leave a thoughtful comment about what genuine connection means to you, share this story with someone who believes meaningful conversations matter, and subscribe if stories like this encourage you to look beyond appearances. Sometimes one conversation can inspire another. As the discussion continued, their mother smiled in a way that surprised them even more. I've been waiting for you to tell me. Those words erased weeks of uncertainty. All this time, the person you love believed they had been hiding everything successfully. But a mother's heart often notices changes long before explanations arrive. She spoke about how real affection isn't measured by dramatic promises. It reveals itself in consistency. In respect. In quiet encouragement. In becoming a better version of yourself simply because someone inspires that growth. The person you love realized they were no longer trying to convince anyone. They were simply telling the truth. And truth has a peaceful confidence that never needs to shout. Yet just as relief began replacing nervousness, something happened that shifted the entire conversation once again. Their mother paused, looked directly into their eyes, and quietly revealed that she had already formed an opinion about you long before hearing today's confession. How? When? That answer would leave the person you love completely speechless. And it would change the meaning of every moment that came before. Just when the room finally felt lighter, their mother folded her hands gently and said something no one expected to hear. I already knew there was someone, long before you told me. The person you love looked up in complete disbelief. How could you possibly know? They asked softly. A warm smile crossed her face. Not the smile of someone guessing, but the smile of someone who had quietly been observing the smallest details all along. I didn't know the name, she admitted. But I knew someone had changed your heart. Those words settled into the silence like the final piece of a puzzle. She explained how she had watched confidence replace uncertainty, kindness replace frustration, patience replace impulsive decisions. Even during difficult days, there was a quiet hope that hadn't been there before. No one changes this deeply without a meaningful reason, she continued. I kept wondering who had inspired this new version of you. Stay with this story for another moment, because the next revelation connected everything in a way no one imagined. The person you love sat quietly, almost overwhelmed. They realized that while they had been hiding their feelings from the world, their actions had been speaking louder than their words. Sometimes hearts reveal themselves without permission. Not through grand declarations, but through gentleness, through consistency, through becoming someone who carries peace wherever they go. Their mother leaned forward once more. I don't want you to chase fantasies, she said carefully. I want you to recognize what is real. Those words weren't meant to discourage. They were meant to protect. She spoke about how genuine connections are never built on pressure or fear. They grow through honesty, respect, patience, and mutual encouragement. The person you love nodded slowly. For the first time, they felt understood instead of questioned. Then came another unexpected pause. Their mother looked toward the window as though remembering something from years ago. When I was younger, she said, I almost ignored someone who brought out the best in me simply because I was afraid of what others might think. The room became completely still. I don't want fear to make your decisions. Those simple words carried wisdom that could not be taught overnight. What if the greatest opportunities in life don't arrive with certainty? What if they arrive quietly, asking only for courage? The person you love felt those words settle deep within their heart. They weren't hearing permission. They were receiving perspective. And perspective changes everything. Just when the conversation seemed complete, their mother asked one final question. A question so unexpected that it caught them completely off guard. She smiled gently and said, if one day I had the chance to meet this person, what would be the very first thing I notice about them? The person you love didn't answer immediately. Instead, they smiled. Not because they had prepared a perfect response, but because, for the very first time, they imagined a future where your name was no longer a hidden secret. And in that quiet smile, their mother found the answer she had been searching for all along. But the story wasn't over. Because what happened after this conversation left the person you love with a decision that would quietly shape everything that came next, and that moment begins and the conversation had ended, but its echoes remained in every corner of the house. Long after the words faded, the person you love sat alone, replaying each sentence over and over again. Something inside them had shifted forever. They hadn't simply shared a secret, they had stepped into a new chapter of their life. But what happened next was even more unexpected. Their mother quietly walked back into the room. She wasn't carrying another question. She wasn't asking for more explanations. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on their shoulder and smiled. "You look lighter," she whispered. Those 3 words touched a place that had been carrying silent weight for so long. The person you love realized she was right. Keeping feelings hidden had become exhausting. Speaking honestly had not solved every mystery. But it had brought peace. And sometimes peace is the first sign that you're finally walking in the right direction. Pause here for just another moment, because the next few minutes reveal why this story was never only about one conversation. Their mother then said something that stayed with them long after that evening. "Never let fear convince you that honesty is a mistake." The room became quiet once again. Outside, the world continued as usual. Cars passed. The evening breeze moved gently through the window. Everything looked ordinary. Yet inside that home, an extraordinary decision had already begun taking shape. The person you love no longer wanted to wonder forever. They no longer wanted to keep imagining, what if? For the first time, they wanted their future to be guided by clarity instead of uncertainty. If stories like this remind you that honest conversations can change lives, feel free to share this video with someone who may need encouragement today. And if you're enjoying this journey, subscribing helps you stay connected for every chapter still ahead. Your thoughts in the comments always become part of this community's story. As night settled in, they found themselves remembering every small moment connected to you. The first impression. The unexpected smile. The conversation that lasted longer than expected. The encouragement that arrived exactly when it was needed. None of those moments seemed accidental anymore. Each memory now felt like another piece of a much larger picture. Then something remarkable happened. Their mother called them back one last time before they went to bed. "There is one more thing," she said gently. "I've learned that the people who truly matter don't simply enter your life to make you feel happy for a moment, they inspire you to become someone you never believed you could be." Those words lingered in complete silence. The person you love didn't answer. They simply smiled again. A quiet smile. A hopeful smile. A smile filled with possibilities they had never allowed themselves to imagine before. That night, before falling asleep, they made a private promise. Not a promise based on pressure. Not a promise built on fantasy. A promise to choose honesty whenever the right moment arrived. A promise to stop letting fear write the ending of a story that had barely begun. Little did they know. The very next day would place an unexpected opportunity directly in front of them, one that seemed almost impossible to ignore. And when that moment arrived, they remembered every word their mother had spoken. Because those words gave them the courage to take the first step toward a future they had once believed was only a dream. Morning arrived with an unusual sense of calm. Nothing around the person you love looked dramatically different, yet everything inside them had changed. The conversation with their mother had removed a burden they had carried for far too long. But they had no idea that the day ahead would quietly test every word they had heard the night before. As they stepped outside, one thought refused to leave their mind. What if this is finally the moment to stop hiding? It wasn't a question filled with pressure. It was filled with possibility. Stay with this story a little longer, because what happened next felt too perfectly timed to ignore. Throughout the day, small reminders of you seemed to appear everywhere. A familiar place. A song that unexpectedly brought back a memory. A simple phrase that sounded strangely connected to something you once shared. None of these moments demanded attention. Yet together, they created a feeling that something meaningful was slowly unfolding. Instead of pushing those thoughts away, they allowed themselves to reflect honestly. For the first time, they stopped asking, "What if this never works?" and started asking, "What kind of person do I want to become, regardless of the outcome?" That single change in perspective transformed everything. Because true courage is not built by knowing every answer. It grows the moment someone chooses authenticity over fear. Hours later, they returned home. Their mother noticed the peaceful expression on their face almost immediately. Without saying much, she handed them a warm cup of tea and quietly smiled. "I can tell you're thinking deeply," she said. The person you love nodded. "I am." After a brief silence, they admitted something they had never said aloud before. "I don't want this story to remain unfinished simply because I was too afraid to be honest." Their mother listened carefully before replying. "Then don't rush, but don't let hesitation become your permanent home either." Those words settled gently into their heart. There is wisdom in patience. But there is also wisdom in recognizing the right moment when it finally arrives. Think about that for a second. How many beautiful opportunities quietly disappear, not because they were impossible, but because no one believed they were ready. The person you love realized they no longer wanted fear to make that decision for them. That evening, they opened an old notebook. Between ordinary pages filled with plans and scattered thoughts, they began writing something completely different. Not a perfect speech. Not a dramatic confession. Just honest words they hoped one day would be spoken at the right time. Every sentence reflected gratitude, respect, admiration, hope. They smiled as they finished. It wasn't about finding flawless words anymore. It was about speaking from a genuine heart. Just before closing the notebook, they paused. Almost as if one final thought had arrived. They wrote a single sentence at the bottom of the page. "If our paths were meant to cross for a reason, I want that reason to find me ready." Then they closed the notebook and looked out the window. They didn't know when the next chapter would begin. They didn't know how. But deep inside, they sensed that the conversation with their mother had not been the ending of a story. It had been the beginning. And what they would discover in the days ahead would reveal that someone else had quietly been noticing this journey from the very start, waiting for exactly the right moment to speak.